Welcome to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, a space for spiritual entrepreneurs who refuse to settle for anything less than their purpose. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi. After surviving a near-death experience and being declared gone for 3 minutes, I woke up with a mission to help women turn self-sabotage into self-compassion and fear into fuel. Here, we're going to dive into raw conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories designed to help you break free from old patterns, claim your voice, and build a business that lights up your soul. If you've ever felt like you don't fit the mold, you're in the right place. This is where Misfits rise into their power. Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi, and in today's episode, it's a little bit different episode, and I'm really excited about it. So I am joined by Paola, and she is a therapist, and she is having, and we are, I should say, we are having a real live style coaching conversation. So this is going to be around her human design, to how to communicate more effectively with her partner, especially within marriage. So you can kind of take whatever you use from this. If you're not married, it doesn't matter. This is just relationship style coaching. So I'm going to be coaching her through her human design and her husband Kyle's design. And we're going to be exploring a very small intentional communication shift that can create more safety, connection, and understanding in relationships. So you can put this to use with wherever you are in your journey. So I wanted to remind everybody, it's not about fixing your partner. It's also not about labeling or blaming. It's about learning how two nervous systems and two energetic designs are wired different, and everybody is wired differently. So this is where you can meet each other with more compassion. So if this is you and you've been speaking from I'm not being heard, conversations turn into frustration or maybe even shut down, or your partner or anybody you're in a relationship with, you can tie this into even business because, you know, a lot of us here listening are also entrepreneurs, that you maybe feel disconnected at times. And this episode is for you. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. It's a long time coming. We've been talking about this for months.
Yes, we sure have. And I wanted to tell the listeners or people that are watching that this was her idea and I was like, oh, I love this because I feel like, you know, if there's somebody struggling, or I shouldn't say struggling, but like having a challenge in their marriage or relationship, most times than not, I feel like the collective also is. So thank you again. I'm going to give you the credit because this was your idea. So thank you. So tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and kind of like where you are in your work today, and kind of like where that has got you.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm going to have to give a disclaimer because when my husband listens to this, he's going to say, we are having marital problems. I didn't know. So I'm like, that's my disclaimer, right? You said like I'm a therapist. So I have a bachelor's in psychology. I was really leaning towards being a marriage and family therapist. And then I really got into behaviorism. So I'm actually trained as a behavior analyst. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. And I also teach psychology. I've been teaching college students, undergrad primarily for the last 11 years. So psychology is always in my life. And I'm constantly the friend that's like, oh, I just read this article that said this, or, you know, whatever it is, because I have to keep reading the textbook every semester. And so I think as, you know, we met and you came onto my podcast and we were talking about how I really want like your help and all the things, I think I'm always working on trying to be self-actualized and try to be the best version of myself, not just at work, which I think there's tons of trainings for that, whether your current company sends you to like a leadership training or boot camps or things of that nature. That's not frowned upon. And that's totally cool right now to say, I listen to a leadership podcast, right? And my boss is like, oh, I love that. Which one is it? And we can trade off. But I noticed that people don't really say like, I went to a marriage boot camp. That is frowned upon. It's like, oh, what's wrong with your marriage? Like nothing. Why do I spend so much time as a leader learning how to communicate well for these strangers really that I encounter, that I shake hands with, that I try to make partnerships with, but not with my partner. And so that's something that I'm just passionate about, like all the psychology that I know and that I learn. Why aren't I not using it in my marriage, with my kids, with my family, to have those relationships in my mind should be the best nurtured relationships, not the, you know, stranger on the street. And I think sometimes it's opposite. We're so kind and polite to the strangers on the street, and then our families get the worst version of ourselves, right? They get like the stressed out version, the trauma dumping, like all the things. And so that's my aim. And hopefully we can do that a little bit in this episode, as your listeners are listening, like whether it's their sister or their mom, like whoever it is in their family, like how can we show up as the most loving, best version of ourselves to those people that really we care about so much more than the stranger that you're holding the door for at the grocery store or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for that disclaimer. Yeah, because and I feel like that's why before, I introduced you, I needed to say it's not about fixing or there
Hmm.
isn't a problem. It's really about, and, I know that you probably talk a lot more about this, but like understanding nervous systems and then like the energy, because we're all just energy. And it's more of like, when I look at, when I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot of, it's February when we're recording this, I'm doing a lot of relationship charts, and I normally do around this time. It's just something that happens all the time
Hmm.
around January, February, March, April, that people come to me and ask me, do you do relationship chart readings? Or I'm having this issue, or I'm seeing that, I'm not being seen, heard, or like I can't communicate correctly with my partner, or maybe it's a parent, or maybe it's your kid. Like you can use this in any way possible to see the energy dynamic. So it's more of like the language of like human design is more of like the language of compassion, in
Hmm.
that relationship. And as when you start to understand how your partner or, the person that you're trying to connect with, they listen or they communicate, it's so much easier. Their
Hmm.
communication style is so much easier for you to say, oh, they listen this way, or they react this way or respond this way. Because, we still have that triggering or that responsive if it's just a way that you're speaking. And it will, when you start to bring in, like, we'll bring in Kyle's chart when I'm reflecting things back. So I'll ask a few questions. Now, just for context, uh, I just want the listeners to know, like, they can't see your chart, so I'm just going
Hmm.
to kind of to say your details to your chart. A lot of people listening to the podcast do understand human design, but so she's a splenic projector. She also is a 3-5 profile, a split definition, and a right angle cross of 4 ways. So what this means for you is splenic projectors communicate best in the moment. And I think, this is, Kyle, this is the part that you need to listen to the most, because this is kind of like a teaching moment. This is how she best communicates. So, also, when you wait too long, that's when the not self theme of that resentment and bitterness builds up. And then your wisdom lands best when you're invited or clearly recognized. So if you can think back to maybe a situation that maybe you can kind of like ask for live coaching is like, how do you usually know when something is off before the words are spoken?
Yeah, I think, and you told me this when you came onto my podcast, and when you said that, I was like, that totally makes sense. I do think that I get resentful that all of a sudden I feel like I do everything, I think of everything, I handle everything. And I've noticed that I feel that way at work and at home. And I've been trying to figure out, at first I thought I'm burned out or I'm taking on too much. And now in the last year, using my human design to my advantage, I'm like, no, this shows me that this is not aligned, right? If I start to feel this way, it's because of X, Y, and Z. So I need to address those things.
Yes. So kind of small, like some small behavioral like shifts that would really benefit you would be like speaking sooner, maybe
Hmm.
gentler or more softer instead of later. that becomes like that heavy, louder, you know, um, the energy versus, once that, like I said, once you start to notice that something is shifting, using your voice to kind of speak of like, this is how I'm feeling. That
Hmm.
is going to, especially for Kyle's design. Now I'll give details and context to his design. He's a manifesting generator. He's also an emotional authority and a 6-2 profile, also a split definition and a left angle cross of confrontation. Or I'm sorry, not confrontation, confrontation. And so what happens is for his authority, some really simple key grounding, like key education here, I should say, is Kyle cannot wait to decide or process clearly in the moment. So, if we're looking at authority right now, yours is instant. So you instantly know a yes or no. Kyle does not. He has to
Hmm.
wait. He's an emotional authority. So he has to wait 90 second. Okay, so it's, if we're thinking no trauma, no problems, no, in a perfect world, a emotional wave lasts 90 seconds in your body. So once you feel an emotion, you feel it and it leaves. However, when that gets stuck to a trauma or something that is not in alignment or whatever it is, that could last weeks, days. It could turn into frustration for him being a manifesting generator. So his emotions move in waves versus yours could be like, this is how I feel, how you feel. With that splenic authority, it's very from somebody that does not have his splenic authority, it could feel like impulses of like she always makes impulse decisions, but that's actually how your authority works. And when that's
Hmm.
not happening, that's actually when the energy gets cut off or things start to feel you're going to get into that not self theme of bitterness or resentfulness when that's not flowing. So his emotions just flow in waves. I mean, human design aside, emotions all flow in waves for us. However, when you add the layer of human design and his authority, how he should be making decisions in alignment with his design, if he's not able to process or decide clearly, and if it's in the moment that he needs to make a decision, it might be, an emotionally high decision versus the more negative positive, like in that if he's really
Hmm.
excited and makes the decision the next week that he's calm, neutral, and clear, it could feel like resentment or like, why did I decide that? And it's only because he made a decision in the moment and then put pressure upon himself to make that, which then creates that shutdown and defensiveness. Does that resonate?
Um, yeah, as you're talking, I'm thinking about what I will respond sometimes is like, why are you changing your mind?
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, I thought we talked about this. And sometimes I blame it on like I'm like, were you not listening? Are you a man? Like, because he'll say, I don't remember that. And I'm like, yes, you were wearing the gray shirt and you said this, and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And like, I'm very factual as a behaviorist about what
Yeah,
happened.
sure. Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, right? We can change our minds. And then I'm like, no, because you said this. And so maybe I'm not giving him enough time. In the moment I ask a question, I already know where I want to go with it. He answers. And 2 days later or a week later, when he changes his mind, when he's actually thought about it, I'm like annoyed that we already discussed this. This was a done deal. What happened?
Yeah. So that's literally what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, the thing that the other way that you can look at it too is just myself having an emotional authority. My husband also has an emotional authority. So, you can see how pausing or like waiting for, and he might not even be aware of this is how he makes decisions. But if he kind of shifts this into, allowing his system to take time to like that little small behavior shift for him could really be framed more compassionate for himself. Because if he just says he needs time, that little space that he gives himself for clarity will come versus your clarity comes instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also you knowing this, like helping. helping him with this, I think would be more supportive of where that is missed, especially when it translates to immediately how you feel, he knows eventually. And I know that
Hmm.
can be hard to hear sometimes, but if you know that he makes a decision, if he's making a decision in the moment, you could always just kind of give that space of like, okay, he might change his mind. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe it's just like he actually that's how he feels.
Yeah.
But I think that is really a common friction point that I lead with, especially because this turns into you not feeling like you might feel unseen. And I'm not saying if this doesn't resonate, don't take it, but you might then feel unseen. Maybe you feel dismissed. He feels like he has pressure or he's cornered. And then, like, what is happening in the connection? Like, that's the piece of that control piece that it's like honoring your authority, understanding his authority, and then, I feel like a lot of people are like, oh my goodness, this is me.
Hmm.
Because this was me in the beginning too, of like, I know every single time that I made a decision in the moment instead of, let me feel into this. And I'm not talking feel into this and it's like a week later. And then like I'm talking like big decisions. Like, when I'm asked a decision, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, I don't know. Like, why do I always have to decide what's for dinner or
Yeah.
something? I'm talking like when we have a conversation of like making sure it's not emotionally charged in that conversation, because then of course you get into other things. Like, it's an emotionally charged story with that, or, and then it's just again pressure and the energy is not able to flow. There's got to be some type of restriction. But I think
Hmm.
that practical piece is really, really important for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of going back in, I'm looking at, so I'm the four things that I look when I'm reading a relationship chart is the theme. So there's different themes. Yours is a 9-0 emotion, relationship theme. And that just means nowhere to go. So, and that is not a bad thing, but let me explain for you. So, if you're somebody that's listening to this too, and you pull your relationship chart and you are the same, this just means is when you put your charts together, your defined and undefined energy systems in your charts are fully connected with one single definition. And that just means that when energy is flowing without interruption, that is how you're combined. So you guys are completely together. You guys have all of this defined energy, which means that there might not be any room for like, let's just say, like conditioning. So the when we look at the human design charts, it's, the undefined centers is where most of the deconditioning has to start coming from first. But when you guys put your charts together, this is pretty much it's a very intense connection, and you might both be closed off in the relationship to like outside influence, which, it is where they get the name from. This is just the name that they call the relationship theme is nowhere to go. So there's like little friction, there's maybe a sense of something missing. Some of the things that I hear from clients that have this too is, you know your partnership just feels complete when you guys are together. Obviously, understanding communication styles helps too, but from this relationship that feels like it could feel difficult and needing space, or maybe a relief from, maybe there is some tension or conflict, just remembering that your theme is like nowhere to go. You might feel like I said earlier, of like trapped, or Kyle might feel trapped or closed off, and you're not being seen and heard, and you feel dismissed. Just remember that you might have hit some tension in your connection, or there's some conflict that needs space. And once you guys have space separately, that's when you can kind of work through, some of whatever, if it was, tension, a challenge, or, like whatever that is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, as you're talking, I'm thinking like maybe we are doing this right because we do give each other a lot of just like our own downtime.
Oh,
And
good.
other couples that I know, they have a lot of shared hobbies, or they're like, they go to the winery together, they do this together, they work out together,
Yeah.
and Kyle and I don't do that. I have my podcast and he goes and does his gardening, and then I'm working on my class and he's playing his video games. Like I think we have every night, actually, at least for an hour, we kind of do our own separate thing, and then we'll like watch a show together, or um maybe we're tired and we're like, I'm gonna go to bed. He's like, me too. And then we just stop whatever we were doing separately. So as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, what you're saying is to do that, I think, is what I got from it. And we're already
Yes,
kind of
absolutely.
doing that. But sometimes you judge yourself based on other relationships, right? And so then I'm like, oh, well, yeah, my husband and I don't want to do that. Like I'm the first one to say, like, I'm going to go to the store and I'll take the girls and you can just stay home. And he'll say, like, are you sure? I'm like, yep. I don't mind going to the store with the girls, and I take a lot of time to hang out with my friends. So you have 2 hours to yourself. And I kind of purposely do that a lot. And it's not because I don't want to be around him, but because
No.
last week I was with my girlfriends. And so I want to give him his 3 hours to himself.
Yeah, and that's actually very powerful. And yes, that's exactly what I was saying. Sometimes I always like to, when, as soon as I say nowhere to go, people immediately, like our egos like to go, well, what am I doing wrong?
Hmm.
No, but it just means when you guys are together, you don't have any open centers or undefined centers where that energy can flow. All your entire chart together is really intense, is like really intense, which is a good thing. However, when there is tension or chaos or, like a disagreement, that is going to be amplified because of the energy together. But
Hmm.
when, like, what I would have suggested if you said, oh, yeah, we do everything together, then I would have suggested doing something separate or having alone time daily, or if it can't be daily, or at least try to schedule that in where you are able to be by yourself. And I think that's by what you just explained is exactly what. Yeah,
Okay, good.
you
Good
are
because
doing that correctly, and that will alleviate tension. Of course, you'll have to let me know how putting this practically in practice with communication you'll start to see you're able to listen to his listening more versus only not maybe not understanding. I know this is more of like, how can I do better versus, oh, I understand how he communicates or how he listens. And then you're able to communicate that from that way, from that place versus him changing his mind and then you feeling not heard, especially being a projector. Um, we want to be seen and heard because most of the time with that waiting for the invitation, sometimes nobody really asks or nobody, hey, can I give a suggestion? Then you kind of open that door up. Can I give you a suggestion? I see that you're having a challenge or you're struggling or whatever. And then that wisdom that you want to share is more openly like, oh, this is what I needed. And we see it, but
Mhm.
we're not, quote unquote, I don't want to say me being a projector too. I'm not saying that it's not valid, but unless we ask for permission,
Mhm.
people are not ready to receive it, and then we get bitter because it's like they're not listening to me. And it's like, oh, wait a second. I didn't ask for permission first. And sometimes, most people, I mean, like, of course, in your work, I'm sure a lot of people valid, like they're like, I love your wisdom. But when it
Mhm.
comes to our
Mhm.
family, it's like, why are you not listening to me? But it's like, oh, I need to frame it this way. So he has something to respond to, being a manifesting generator, asking a question or asking that permission. I think that will be a huge game changer for both of you.
Yeah, I think that that's something that I definitely need to do in my personal life because at work it's just expected, right? I
Right,
supervise people, I mentor people, people
right.
reach out to me like, "Hey, can you offer me some consultation?" And so it's just implied or very directly like, my job is to tell you my opinion right now and to help you with this. You're coming to me for help. If you didn't need help, you wouldn't have called me. And with your family, it's not always like that, right?
Right. Yes. And that's huge too, because they're the closest people to you. And the most of the time, the people that you spend the most time with, for the most part, you know?
Hmm.
So it's like that shared, basically that shared instinct that both of you can, fully process, and you guys fully process things different. And then
Yeah.
it's coming from that place of, oh, it's more grounded. And for him, how he can support you in your design is, you know, you can give him like time cues if that works for him, and he can kind of take this however it lands or resonates with him. But like he doesn't, you don't need to respond, or you can say you don't need to respond right now. And I think that takes pressure off of him having to make a decision in the moment versus you're making a decision in the moment, because that's how your authority works, and that's just how you trust your gut, and that's just how you have self-trust.
Hmm.
So asking maybe yes or no questions, or just questions in general. Same thing goes for vice versa for him. He has to be able to respond to something. And I'm sure that you're very good at this, but like asking those questions that he can, or you asking those questions to him that he can respond to in the time that, like, let's circle back later, or if it is some type of conflict or tension, circling back later instead of resolving it immediately, I think will take a lot of pressure off of him, and especially a lot of bitterness and resentment from you too, as well.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Is there any specific questions before I kind of go into like integration, and especially in the lens of like you being a therapist, that you have so far between like communication? Or is there something they're like, I need more clarity on this? Or do you need me to kind of reframe some things that you're like, I need more examples so I can actually go tangibly apply this?
I think the biggest thing that I was thinking about is, I had a baby, and so we did spend a lot of time together in those first 6 weeks after my
Mhm.
C-section, all the things. But I think I know it's unrealistic because no one does this, but I feel very connected to him, like you said. But then I want him to read my mind.
Oh,
I don't think that I want him to read my mind, but I think he thinks that I want him to read my mind. Like I talked about this on my podcast when we were talking about communication as well. And I said, I can tell my girlfriend, like, oh, hand me that. And she just grabs it and gives it to me. And if I say that to him in the kitchen, he's like, what thing? And I'm like, that. And he's like, there's six that's on this counter. Which one is it? And so I'm like, is that just a female versus male thing? But I'm like, I'm walking out the door and I have the baby in my hand. Out of the six things, which is the one baby thing that's there? Hand me that. Right. And so I've been like, okay, I have to just say, hand me the baby's burp cloth, please, instead of hand me that, which is faster. And so he's like, you expect me to read your mind? I'm like, so am I
yeah.
expecting him to read my mind, or is it just two different human designs, or what's going on? Because I think when you're sleep deprived or tired or stressed, or like you said, the nervous system, I'm like, I don't want to give you three sentences. If I could just say two words, just read my mind.
Yeah. I think it's actually a collective, like three different things. So it could be human design. It also could be the nervous system. And it also could just be innately him being masculine, because it's like his logical mind needs, like, it's the systems. Like, so it's like, it's more of like females, or, like that intuitive, like, well, she has a baby very quickly. She has a baby in her hand. She knew there's a burp cloth over there. She probably needs that. So it's kind of like that intuitive nature of like, I know exactly what she needs. However, it could be more of like a performance, like trait that he is like, I need to make sure that I give her exactly what she needs, and I can't mess up. So that could also be like a self-worth thing for him, or, making sure, or just making sure that he is doing enough for you. Because again, men have that huge wound of, I'm not enough, or am I doing enough? So I think it could be a lot of the things. It could be like, or I should say collectively, it could be all three things
Hmm.
versus, him just wanting to make sure that he is. Now, however, he could just simply be, I feel like men if you don't give them direct directions and very specific, sometimes, and I'm sure you see this a lot, that it's like, okay, kind of like going back to like my younger self or like my daughter, she's 6. If I tell her, okay, let's get dressed, her mind is like, okay, and then I'm like, oh, then I ask her to get dressed and I'm like, okay, no, do this. But then she didn't even do the first thing. And then, or I do this a lot. I'm guilty of this. I do this a lot with my husband too, that I'm like, hey, can you help me do this? And then before he gets to do that, I'm like, oh yeah, and I also need help with this. And then he's like, I don't even know what you asked me to do in the first place. I'm not doing any of it because now I'm just overwhelmed. So it could also be a lot of that, especially because, congratulations again. But it's a new, not that like you're a new mom, but it's like a new chapter. Now
Hmm.
you have two instead of one. So, you're adding to that. So it could be, maybe he was feeling overwhelmed. Maybe he's feeling your overwhelm
Hmm.
or, a collective of that too. So I don't know if that helps with that, but that's just kind of what I intuitively am seeing between
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that that's the hard thing because again, as a behavior analyst, I just want to know like what is the one thing and fix it. And then your answer was like it could be a lot of different things. So in that way, it's like okay, but he's very much an involved parent,
Yeah.
and we do co-parent really well, and we are he takes the girls sometimes in the morning and in the afternoon, or we vice versa. But it's just interesting, and I keep trying to have it not be gendered because I'm really passionate about that. And we talk about
Sure.
mental load all the time on the podcast. And so sometimes I'm like, well, I know he's really trying to not be gendered, but the reality is that he was socialized in this way. Like when you said something about like women are intuitive, right? And it's like, but I think we're socialized to be that way because we are socialized to always be scanning the environment and seeing like what could you possibly need? What could you want? So I think he can learn it, but I guess we have over 30 years of learning of that versus when a man becomes a father, they just start learning it.
Right. Yeah. And especially too, just, societies too, of like society conditioning these men to be like, they have intuitions. They, depending or I have seen it both ways of like a single mom that raises boys consciously and, that they are going to be more nurturing then somebody is raised by just a dad that was constantly defensive, constantly like do all of that out of fear based. There's a difference too. So it's like that
Hmm.
also comes in, play with too of like trauma and conditioning and, all of that. I think that for the, I don't want to say it's not that way for everybody, but women are just natural leaders. That we have that intuition, that intuitive, like I know what I know how to help. And I know that there's a huge, awakening to like, these men that are doing their healing, are doing, back to how it used to be versus what society has kind of groomed them to be.
Yeah.
So it's like shifting in that. So we're proud of you, Kyle. He's
Yes, we
probably
are.
listening to this like, oh my God.
I know. Yeah. My podcast hosts were like, I can't believe you're doing this to the poor man. Like, I was like,
Oh, no.
I'm helping Lauren. She's helping me.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm actually super, when I said I was excited, I'm genuinely very excited because I feel like doing these kind of coaching style podcasts are important. And because it's kind of like, you know, even though we're talking about your situation, people can resonate with however they're going to be, resonating with it from. And they don't necessarily even have to be a therapist either.
Hmm.
It's kind of like it goes back to like how safety is created, especially emotional safety, and like understanding the way that your energy works. And then how does your partner's energy works? People can use this in parenting too. They can use how do I conscious parent my child? How does my child respond? You know, I'm a projector and my mom's a manifesting generator. So the way that I respond is much different than the way that she responds. And, she learned just how her mom, taught her. And like that goes
Hmm.
back generations too. And it's more of like, oh, my child is different. they respond this way. Let me try this. And that immediately changes behavior. I see it so much in my daughter too, of like, she's a generator. She doesn't respond the way that I respond. Or, I mean, and she doesn't react as much now too. I've seen that. I mean, she's 6, she still reacts, but
Hmm. Yeah.
that's just her consciousness. But if I ask her options and I tell her to say, if somebody asks you a question, you ask them for options. Like, I can't just be like, what color do you, or what do you want to wear today? She's going to be like, I don't know. And then some people are like, oh, you can't make up your mind. And then it goes down that rabbit hole versus, do you
Hmm.
want to wear a blue or do you want to wear a red shirt? Do you want to wear these shoes or do you want to wear these shoes? Now, and if she's like, either, I'm like, okay, well, you have to pick, like,
Yeah. Oh, and I love
or,
that because you're teaching her how to communicate best with her human design, right? You're like, I'm not going to
right,
change your human design. And it's the
right,
same as like if you're doing relationship coaching or anything, like you're not going to change your partner. I think a lot of people go into relationships wanting the person to change and be a different version of themselves. It's like, no, this is the person. And it is what it is. And so how do you then maybe say, hey, I'm pretty quick at like I'm gonna know, like we're looking at houses right now. And so I can say like I'm gonna know within like the first 5 minutes if I like this house or not. But
right.
I'm gonna keep that to myself. Like let's finish the whole house tour, let's drive, and then on the way to the coffee shop, I can say, so what did you think? And like really give him time to
Yeah.
process that versus me immediately being like, nope, this isn't going to work because of this, this, and this. Maybe that shuts him down because he's like, why would I tell her yes when she's already made up her mind about a no or whatever, right? So as you're
Yeah.
talking, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm not going to change my opinion or who I am, but I'm just going to sit back a little bit or say, like, let me know whenever you're ready to talk about what you thought of that last house. Like, should we go see the house, then have lunch, then talk about it so that he's not feeling like right there, the moment we walk out, we have to send an offer letter, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think that if him being does he seem to be very in touch with his intuition? Like, does he seem to be like he can express like this is how this makes me feel? Or do you feel like he immediately shuts down because he doesn't maybe want to disappoint you, or maybe he made this, there could be that shame that comes up, right? Of like, I told her this and I really meant that.
Hmm.
So that could be his way of kind of like getting out of it, like, oh, I don't remember. That's what came up too.
Hmm.
When you had said that it's safer for him to say that, even though
Hmm.
that creates conflict anyway. But maybe, I don't know him, but it's just like intuitively for me, I'm feeling like maybe that's safer for him to say, oh, I don't remember. When he does remember, he just wanted to change his mind, or maybe he made a decision in that moment. But I think like giving him that time can be challenging too, because if you need to make a decision at a certain time and he's taking forever to make a decision,
Yeah.
that's frustrating. Like that's very frustrating. So it's like coming to an equal place of like, this works for me, what works for you, I need to know. And then, having that conversation of helping, like helping you understand him more in the way that he operates, or the things that what I've noticed with my own husband, Joey. I noticed that I always, in my mind, always thought I knew how he felt without actually asking him
Hmm.
how he felt. And I realized one of my actual really close friends and clients had said to me, Lauren, maybe you should just ask him how he feels. And I was like, my God, when do I ever ask that? Because it's just like, I'm going off of, again, how I'm reading the energy. I'm reading the room, doing all the things that most of us women know how to do. And I'm coming up with my own assumption on how that energy feels, realizing that that's not his voice. Like has
Yeah.
not spoke that, but also what have I done to ask how he feels? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that
And
that
that comes up a lot, like in couples therapy. I feel like all therapists will say, like, okay, you're telling me you think he's going to be mad at you. Did you
right.
ask him if he's mad at you or you think he's going to, right? And then I think that that's a huge aha moment for everybody in therapy. Like, oh,
Yeah.
no, I haven't asked this person. I'm just putting
Yeah.
all my thoughts into this scenario or the situation. And that makes sense, right? That's why we're there
Yeah.
in therapy because of all the things that are just going in our heads.
Yeah. And I think that that is probably the biggest the reason why I dove so into, I've always loved human design, but I realized that I've started to see patterns in my own relationship with myself. And I realized they were also mirrored in the relationship with other partners that I was in. Like I could remember situations of like just different things, especially the one, in my marriage now that I'm like, I am, very much a part of that equal part, like that problem. And realizing how can I, then I dove into his chart of looking at his chart of like, how do I communicate, efficiently with him that allows him to, not putting the label of like, oh, he's a Libra, and like Libras, they're indecisive. That's a shadow thing and all this stuff because he would always make that excuse. And I
Mhm.
started to see, oh, these are just excuses of like, that's who you are. Because I mean, astrology is amazing. So is human design, but it's not ever meant to be a way to kind of put you in this box of like,
Mhm.
that's the reason why I do what I do. I can't make a decision because I'm a Libra. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Stop it. Like, just stop.
Mhm. Yeah.
Let me figure out how. And then I was like, let me figure out how I can ask the right question. Because he always had said asking the right questions. And sometimes I'm like, I just need you to answer like how you feel. Like, I don't need to
Mhm.
now to articulate how to ask different questions. So it was like coming from, I'm just going to ask you how you feel. Like, how does this
Yeah.
make you feel? What is, from your perspective? And then just listen. Not trying to fix
Mhm.
anything, not trying to, like, oh, okay, that's why that happened. That's why you got angry. That's why you felt bitter. That, like, because I'm not aware of that. And I think men in general, they just want to make sure that they're not pissing off their wives, especially when it's
Mhm.
like happy happy wife, happy life. And it's just like, yeah, but also, I feel like there has to be a level of like our own self-awareness. I think that that's
Mhm.
really important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so before we wrap this up, thank you so much for hopefully everybody is like, oh my God, this is me. I feel lighter. I hope you feel lighter and more clarity. And kind of just tell the listeners like just one way that you feel like, and especially in the lens of being a therapist, that they could kind of implement and you're going to also implement to practice what we kind of went over today.
Yeah, I mean, I think I truly feel that you really only have control over your own behavior. We can't even control our kids, right? Even the 2-year-old, 12-year-old, 20-year-old. That really shouldn't be what we aim to do. We can obviously influence people, but the way that we influence them is us having control about what we're doing. So, like the example that I gave with buying a house, right? Like, if looking at your human design, whether you're using it in leadership or as we talked about today in this relationship, then that whatever you told me, I'm going to use that and apply it to myself. So that would be my biggest tip. Like, think about how to be true to yourself and how you can actually not change your design, or the goal is not to go to therapy to change yourself, but more like, okay, I'm going to therapy or I'm going to use behavior analysis or whatever it is, this coaching to be true to myself. And by being true to yourself, what I've seen is that you then are not bitter, you're not resentful, right? You're just really having your energy flow in the right way and being true to yourself, but also knowing that not everybody thinks like you. And so giving people space then to be true to themselves too. Like, let them be who they are and they'll let you be who you are too. Then it'll just kind of work. And so I'm glad that you said the things that you said because it really has resonated with me. The biggest thing that resonated, just so you know, is, we've only been married. This is our going to be our 5th year married.
Mhm.
And we have 2 kids, two and under in the 5 years that we've been married, 7 years together. But you do compare yourself to other relationships, people that I know that have been married 12, 15 years, right? And like I said, they do things differently. And so I think, oh, maybe I'm supposed to do what they're doing. And they might be doing things differently because their human design is that way, or they could be unhealthy in the things that they're doing.
Right.
But most people don't walk up and go, hey, I'm in a really unhealthy relationship. So that's
Right.
another thing, just to give you that feedback that I think you
Okay.
really
Thank you.
helped me with today. It's like, hey, these things are aligned, these things work. And if you guys are leaving yourselves alone for an hour every night, great, because you're not having any
Yeah.
problems, you're not having any issues. And that's what actually is healthy for us. Like I had never realized I do sometimes sit by myself, watching TV and I think like, oh, should I be with him right now? But I kind of don't really want to. And I'm sure he's thinking the same thing. I'm sure he's thinking, oh,
Yeah.
am I supposed to hang out with my wife? I don't really want to. I really like what I'm doing now. And then, but I yeah, we're not resentful. It works for us and it's great. So thank you for validating that for me.
Of course. Yeah, I feel like regardless of any type of human design, I feel like we all of us, especially, if you're an entrepreneur, you're a busy mom, you're a busy dad, or, you work full time, or maybe you do all of it or none of it. We all just need time to like ourself, like to be alone,
Hmm.
especially if you are a parent. Like that is huge because, and especially a mom, because we're doing it all. And it's like we forget, even if it's 10 minutes, people hear, like I hear people say all the time, like, oh, I don't have time for myself. And I'm like, none of us have time for
Hmm.
ourselves. You have to create that time. And if
Hmm.
you having two kids under two, and having the podcast and working and having your business, like if you can do it, like there is no reason that somebody else can't tell me that they can't do it. And it's like 10 minutes of like just sitting in silence or I don't know, doing whatever you want to do. Like that
Hmm.
has to be created and made a habit because if not, you're going to start blaming the other person or I don't have time or like that's going to you're just creating problems and you're
Yeah.
just creating all this unnecessary drama pretty much in your relationship and really you just need to be like what do I need even if I'm not saying
Hmm.
like an hour a day. I do know that like my husband I've started to see him of like not doing things for himself and doing so much and over giving. And then it's like I start to see like, hey, hey, why don't you go to the gym? Or like, why don't you go play, loves playing PlayStation. Why don't you go play PlayStation? Like, I don't, to be honest, I want to be by myself.
Hmm.
So it's like I also like alone time, to, not have to worry about my daughter or what my business needs or like a client or what I just like to be by myself. Like I don't want to respond.
Hmm.
So I think that's really powerful. So thank you so much for, that feedback. So can you just tell the listeners where everybody can find you and then also your podcast? I'll make sure that link is also below in the description box.
Yeah, so you can listen to me talk about behaviorism and little small life tweaks that you can make, or behavior tweaks, I should say, to hack your life. I think I'm super passionate, like I said, about using psychology to your best advantage. Weekly on Tuesdays, we have a new episode every single week on Tuesdays. It's called the Everyday ABA Podcast, and you can find us on Apple, Spotify, just anywhere you find podcasts at. You can also follow me on Instagram. My handle is at Professor Paola. And we also have a podcast Instagram, which is at everydayaba.3, because you'll hear me and my two co-hosts there. There's three of us that talk about all our life's problems and how we're trying to use psychology to hack them every week.
And yes, I'm like, go make sure you go listen to her podcast because I just love all three of you. It's just amazing. And just the things that you talk about, I just like love it. So thank you again for everything that you have brought, the wisdom that you brought. And if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I like this live example of what it looks like. This is actually what a little bit about what you would experience, just like a little, like a small bit. We'll go into more deeper things like on an actual relationship chart reading call with me, but it's very similar to like real life practical coaching that I help you understand how you communicate, how if this is with yourself, if this could be like some people ask me, could this be my parents or could this be my kid or whoever that you need help with communication? It does not have to be a partner. I want to say that because it can help, but it doesn't necessarily, it could be anybody that you're in a
Hmm.
relationship with, is a way that you can actually create more connection and safety through the body, which is the most important part. So everybody listening, or if you're watching this over on YouTube, make sure you check out all of her links below. And if you're listening and watching and you resonate with this and you want to more deeper community, grounded heart center space, I'm inviting you into the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood. This is also where we explore more human design, nervous system awareness, and conscious connection. And that link below will also be below in the show notes, or like I said, if you're watching this over on YouTube. Thank you so much for being here with us. And also let us know if you're watching this on Spotify. I think you can actually add a comment or put this over on YouTube if you want more content like this. I will get you guys more content with this. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next week. If today's episode spoke to you and you're ready to rise with support, I'd love to invite you in to the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood, a sacred community for spiritual entrepreneurs to heal, grow, and lead with purpose. You can join us by using the link below in the show notes or connecting with me over on Facebook or Instagram at The Mermaid Light. If you loved today's episode, subscribe, share, and leave a review. This helps support us reach more women who are ready to rise. Remember, your journey isn't about fitting in. It's about embracing the truth of who you are. Until next time, stay inspired, stay aligned, and keep creating your extraordinary path. This is Lauren, and you've been listening to the Enlightened Misfits podcast.